Welcome, chess enthusiasts. Today's analysis of a legendary match from the 1985 World Championship. We're diving into the intense rivalry between Anatoly Karpov and Garry Kasparov, two giants of the chess world whose battles have captivated fans for decades. In this particular game, Karpov is playing as white while Kasparov takes the black pieces. The match is renowned for its strategic complexity and the incredible tactical skirmishes that unfolded on the board. Each move carries the weight of deep calculation and fierce competition, showcasing the unique styles of both players. So, grab your boards, and let's jump into the action. 1 d4, white's pawn to d4, Karpov opens with the queen's pawn, controlling the center. d5, black's pawn to d5, Kasparov responds symmetrically, also controlling the center. 2 c4, white's pawn to c4, Karpov plays the queen's gambit, challenging for central space. e6, black's pawn to e6, Kasparov defends his d5 pawn and prepares to develop his pieces. 3 and c3, white's knight to c3, Karpov develops his knight, increasing control over the center. b7, black's bishop to e7, Kasparov prepares to castle, ensuring his king's safety. 4c takes d5, white's pawn captures d5, Karpov opens the center with a pawn exchange. e takes d5, black's pawn captures d5, Kasparov recaptures, maintaining the pawn presence in the center. 5b f4, white's bishop to f4, Karpov develops his bishop to an active square, eyeing the black knight. N6, black's knight to f6, Kasparov develops his knight, attacking the pawn on e4. 6e3, white's pawn to e3, Karpov solidifies his center and prepares to develop his other pieces. Black castles kingside, Kasparov secures his king's safety. 7 and f3, white's knight to f3, Karpov develops his knight, supporting the center and preparing to control more squares. bf5, black's bishop to f5, Kasparov places his bishop on an active square, developing his piece harmoniously. 8h3, white's pawn to h3, Karpov prevents potential bg4 while giving his king a safe retreat. c6, black's pawn to c6, Kasparov prepares to support his center and develop his light-squared bishop. 9g4, white's pawn to g4, Karpov launches a pawn storm on the king's side, looking for aggressive opportunities. bg6, black's bishop to g6, Kasparov retreats his bishop to a safer square, maintaining its potential. 10 and e5, white's knight to e5, Karpov centralizes his knight, putting pressure on f7 and c6. nfd7, black's knight to d7, Kasparov reroutes his knight to challenge the powerful e5 knight. 11 n takes g6, white's knight captures g6, Karpov captures the knight, opening lines for his pieces. f takes g6, black's pawn captures g6, Kasparov recaptures, opening the f-file for his rook and strengthening his pawn structure. 12 bg2, white's bishop to g2, Karpov develops his bishop, targeting the center and putting pressure on the e4 square. nb6, black's knight to b6, Kasparov looks to reposition his knight for better control of the center. 13, white castles kingside, Karpov secures his king and connects his rooks. kh8, black's king to h8, Kasparov moves his king to remove potential back rank threats. 14 and e2, white's knight to e2, Karpov reroutes his knight, aiming to play f4 and control the f-file. g5, black's pawn to g5, Kasparov pushes for counterplay on the king's side. 15 bg3, white's bishop to g3, Karpov positions his bishop for potential threats against the black king. bd6, black's bishop to d6, Kasparov develops his bishop, reinforcing the center and eyeing the king's side. 16 qd3, white's queen to d3, Karpov centralizes his queen and prepares to support his king's side onslaught. na6, black's knight to a6, Kasparov repositions his knight to attack the c5 square. 17 b3, White's pawn to b3, Karpov prepares to solidify his pawn structure for future advancement. qe7, Black's queen to e7, Kasparov centralizes his queen, making the rooks connected and ready for action. 18b takes d6, White's bishop captures d6, Karpov decisively exchanges bishops, opening up lines. Q takes d6, Black's queen captures d6, Kasparov recaptures, recovering material and retaining control. 19 f4, White's pawn to f4, Karpov pushes forward, looking to open lines against the Black king. G takes f4, Black's pawn captures f4, Kasparov looks to alleviate pressure but opens the G file. White's pawn captures f4, Karpov recaptures, reinforcing his control of the center. Ra-e8, Black's rook to e8, Kasparov centralizes his rook, putting pressure on the e-file. 21 f5, White's pawn to f5, Karpov advances. And c7, Black's knight to c7, Kasparov tries to reroute his knight, but Karpov maintains pressure. 22 rf2, White's rook to f2, Karpov doubles down on the pawn, supporting his impending attack. And d7, Black's knight to d7, Kasparov brings his knight back to help defend. 23 g5, White's pawn to g5, Karpov pushes the pawn towards the Black king. qe7, Black's queen to e7, Kasparov prepares to defend and potentially counterattack. 24 h4, White's pawn to h4, Karpov continues his aggressive advance on the king's side. qe3, Black's queen to e3, Kasparov aims to exchange queens and reduce the pressure. 25 rd1, White's rook to d1, Karpov applies pressure on the central file, preparing for a double attack. nb5, Black's knight to b5, Kasparov moves to challenge the rook. 26 q takes e3, White's queen captures e3, Karpov accepts the exchange and gains a tactical advantage. R takes e3, Black's rook captures e3, Kasparov recaptures, but his position is becoming precarious. 27 kh2, White's king to h2, Karpov moves his king to safety while preparing an attack. nb6, Black's knight to b6, Kasparov's knight looks for better positioning but is still struggling. 28 ng3, White's knight to g3, Karpov brings his knight closer to the action, supporting the king's side. nc8, Black's knight to c8, Kasparov attempts to reposition his knight again, looking for counterplay. 29 nf1, White's knight to f1, Karpov retreats his knight, preparing to support his aggressive pawn structure and improving his position. Black's rook to e7, Kasparov centralizes his rook, looking to support his pieces and possibly target the e-file. White's rook to d3, Karpov reinforces his control in the center, preparing to double rooks and create threats. nc6, Black's knight to d6, Kasparov repositions his knight, looking for an active role and to challenge Karpov's control. 31 ng3, White's knight to g3, Karpov brings his knight back into the action, eyeing the center and the king's side. ne4, Black's knight to e4, Kasparov places his knight aggressively, looking to trade off White's strong pieces or create threats. 32b takes e4. White's bishop captures e4, Karpov decides to exchange, eliminating the active knight that was causing him issues. D takes e4. Black's pawn captures e4, Kasparov recaptures, maintaining a pawn on e4 and continuing to exert pressure. White's rook to e3, Karpov activates his rook, putting pressure against the pawn on e4 and preparing to attack. And takes d4. Black's knight captures d4, Kasparov captures a pawn on d4, but this move may release some tension. 34 kh3. White's king to h3, Karpov moves his king towards safety, ensuring he has a pathway against potential checks. Black's rook to e5, Kasparov tries to centralize his rook for possible counterplay, threatening White's pieces. 35 kg4. White's king to g4, Karpov brings his king closer to the action on the king side, essential for both offense and defense. h5 check. Black's pawn to h5 with check, Kasparov pushes a pawn, trying to disturb White's king. 36k takes h5. White's king captures h5, Karpov captures the pawn willingly, heading into a more active position. And takes f5. Black's knight captures f5, Kasparov captures the knight, but Karpov is still better positioned. 37r takes f5. White's rook captures f5, Karpov takes back the knight, continuing to pressure the black position. rf takes f5. Black's rook captures f5, Kasparov trades rooks, but the material imbalance favors Karpov as he has a more active position. White's knight captures f5, Karpov continues to eliminate threats while maintaining his material and positional advantage. r takes f5. Black's rook captures f5, Kasparov deals some tactical exchanges but faces difficulties with the endgame position. 39r takes e4. White's rook captures e4, Karpov captures the pawn on e4, further improving his position and solidifying his control. kh7. Black's king to h7, Kasparov moves his king back, hoping to create some safety in a challenging situation. 40r e7. White's rook to e7, Karpov doubles down on pressure, putting his rook on the 7th rank, menacing the opposing pawns. b5. Black's pawn to b5, Kasparov attempts to hold off White's advance by pushing the pawn. 41r takes a7. White's rook captures a7, Karpov captures the pawn and now has a dangerous pawn advantage with active pieces. b4. Black's pawn to b4, Kasparov pushes his pawn, looking for counterplay, but it's becoming desperate. 42 kg4. White's king to g4, Karpov's king moves further into the fray, aiding the rook and pawns in the attack. Game result. Karpov wins. His strategic dominance and skillful technique lead him to victory in a complex endgame. Thank you for joining us as we explored this thrilling encounter between Anatoly Karpov and Gary Kasparov in the 1985 World Championship. If you enjoyed this analysis, please like and subscribe for more chess content. Share your thoughts in the comments. What did you find most interesting about this game? We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep practicing and may your games be filled with insights and victories.